Welcome to Karen's Conversations. I'm really pleased to be talking today to Rob England, who a lot of you will know as the IT Skeptic. I'm going to talk to Rob a bit about his journey, and then we're going to talk about, and I think it's appropriate as we reach the end of 2016 and start looking to 2017, a bit of an epiphany that Rob had in not too recent times. So I'm going to throw to Rob to introduce himself, not that it really needs any introduction. Welcome, Rob.
Hello, welcome. Thank you. Yeah, oh, no, I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who don't know the IT Skeptic. I have a following, but that doesn't mean that I don't strike plenty of people who stare blankly at me. So, yeah, the IT Skeptic, it's a blog, been going 10 years now. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Had the 10th anniversary recently. And so I've been discussing these things internationally all that time with some of the people who'll be listening. And also I consult in IT, ITSM, now sort of more generally IT management of any sort. And been doing that for 10 years in Wellington as well, which is great. And that's how I pay the bills, because blogging certainly doesn't pay the bills.
No, generally writing doesn't. It might be fun, but it doesn't pay for much. Yeah, I know that.
Correct. There's no living in it. So, yeah. So I work around town, which has grown from service management stuff, as I say, to more strategic and transformational stuff, which sort of leads on a bit to our conversation today, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said 10 years. So what was the driver behind the IT Skeptic coming about?
Originally, so I got sick of the whole corporate thing, and you know, a few things sort of happened in my life, and I said, to hell with this, and decided to go out on my own. And there was this thing called the internet, and apparently it was the Wild West, and that was where all the money was to be made. So go internet, young man. So I looked at the internet and how could you make money on there without doing pornography or spam, and that sort of left this new thing called blogging, and people, there were wild stories about the money in blogging. So I thought, okay, I'll learn how to blog and I'll start a blog. And I had done a presentation on being skeptical about ITIL locally here in Wellington. So I thought, there's a good topic for a blog. We'll call it the ITIL Skeptic. And so I did. And there was this vacuum. Everybody was talking wonderful, sunny, rosy stuff about ITIL. And nobody, well, not nobody, but there wasn't a lot of people taking a skeptical view or providing a forum for skeptical views. So, yeah, I sort of accidentally stumbled into this vacuum, and the blog got sucked into this space where everybody wanted to read it and hear about it and be part of it. And early on, I talked about how CMDB is a load of bollocks, and so that got some mileage in the early days of the blog, and sort of expanded it quite rapidly. And then it was supposed to be just an experiment, right? It was supposed to be just, let's try blogging. And as I say, 10 years later, the damn thing's got a life of its own.
It certainly has. And for a long period of time, Rob, there was no sort of name, or people didn't know who was behind the IT Skeptic. So when did, Rob England come out from behind the curtain?
Actually, not that late, actually, fairly early on, because I think even less than the first year. So there was a lot of conjecture, but as I say, there was this vacuum and people stepped into it. So there were some people who took the opportunity to be quite nasty and personal in commenting on the blog, not to me, but about others. And I was calling them out on the blog saying, well, if you're going to say things like that, you should at least have the courage to put your name to, oh, wait. So I sort of thought, well, I'm going to have to not be anonymous if I'm calling out other people for their anonymous and nasty comments. So that was what motivated me to lift the veil of anonymity and say who it was. so that I could then call out some of the other people.
Absolutely. So you talked about some of the things, initially, skeptical about the rosy world of ITIL and CMDB. But what we're going to, at the core of our conversation is, like I said, not too recent, what I called an epiphany, when something you've been quite skeptical about was totally turned on its head. So tell us a bit about that. And of course, we're talking about DevOps.
We are, and Agile. So I was quite skeptical about the whole idea of increased volatility and increased cadence, and that not being risky, and how the hell can that not be risky, and you can't be serious. And so I was involved in some really good debates around that, with Agile and with DevOps. And so one of the people I debated with a lot was John Willis, who's a lot of people watching this will know. A lot more people will know him than know me. He's one of the authors of the DevOps Handbook, and John's one of the great thinkers of DevOps, one of the great minds. And I've known John online since he was a mainframe Tivoli guy, and we've been corresponding. So as he went on his DevOps journey, I was kind of running alongside him, chucking rocks at him, and he was very patient about that. But we had some good, brisk conversations, and John was starting to chip away at me and my resolve, and starting to blow apart all my arguments. And so I was already weakening, and then I heard about this thing called anti-fragile. I forget who from originally, possibly John, possibly Charlie Betts or someone like that.
Yep.
And I went looking, and I found a blog post by Jez Humble about anti-fragile, and that just blew me away. That was the moment when I suddenly realized that it's not just fragile versus robust, it's not just ITIL versus the enemy, that it's a three-way thing where there are two opposites to fragile, as I like to put it. There's robust, which is the traditional way of building IT and make it rock solid, fortress production, bolted down. And there's anti-fragile, which is still the opposite of fragile, but also the opposite of robust. It says that we build systems that evolve and respond to stress and thrive under stress and grow better under stress. One of the things that Nick Tallard, the author of the concept of anti-fragile, said was that robust systems are fragile under stress, which is actually counterintuitive. But what it means is that robust systems resist stress, but only up to a certain point. And if you apply sufficient stress, then they shatter and collapse. And that was a big moment for me to understand so that's what our problem is, that we put our production systems under sufficient stress that eventually they break, and that anti-fragile is the alternative way of thinking about that. And anti-fragile is one of the underpinning intellectual concepts behind Agile and DevOps. So suddenly DevOps is on the same side as traditional ITSM. We're all trying to move away from fragile. We're just taking different paths to being not fragile. And there's a Bachman Turner Overdrive reference in there for the oldies listening. And that was the big aha moment. Was actually Jez Humble was the last straw that broke me, and suddenly I got it. Suddenly I was like, oh my God, I've been so wrong about this, and I'm sorry. And started trying to reverse the damage.
So tell us, and this has arrived recently, so this is much bigger than I expected it to be. It's a first-sized, and it's been long awaited by the community, I know, but
it's not that big compared to. Oh, actually, I've moved. How's this? I've moved my ITIL books. They're no longer up in the key position anymore. But yeah, it's certainly not a big book compared to the 6.8 kilos of ITIL, though, right? It's still a
that's very true. That's very true. And Yeah, but all my ITIL is online now. I don't have any
Mm.
books. I actually found some V1 books when I was moving house, and I was like, seriously, am I really
Yeah.
going to look at these anymore? But anyway, we digress. But yes, I'm looking forward to reading that. So, tell us about some of the things that you've been doing with DevOps since this wake up moment, because I know you've been doing a lot of things.
So, one of the first things I did was, at some point I engaged in conversations with Gene Kim, and he's an incredibly helpful and collaborative person, and very generous with his time. And so I heard about the DevOps Enterprise Conference in the US, and I thought, I have to go to that. So I did, the first one. And so I'm now one of the few people on the planet, apparently. There's only a small number of people who have been to all 4 DevOps Enterprise conferences, 3 in San Francisco and 1 in London. And I may continue that track record next year as well. I'm not sure. It's an expensive investment, but it's been a good one. So by going to that event, I started building my own knowledge, and then I started speaking about that here in Wellington, trying to spread the good word of DevOps to ITSMF local events, to the local computer society events, and I started, and any street corners, anyone who would listen.
Anyone will listen to you,
yeah. And I did some presentations to some of the local service providers and some of the local, because Wellington's a government town, so some of the ministries, people said, hey, come in and present the story you're telling. And that built momentum. So for a while, people were just mildly interested, and just in 2015, suddenly people were like, oh, DevOps, yeah, we want to hear about that. And it just took off. And that was, and then people started engaging me and saying, do you consult? And I'm like, well, I might. and so I built a DevOps practice in town that has really ripped on. And I hate to say it for all the ITSM people listening, but I also detected a distinct decline in my ITSM work, right? Both conference stuff internationally and also consulting work. But the work was there, but it was, maybe this is just my own personal experience, but it was becoming less and less strategic work and more what I call shoveling out the stables, So there was more and more, it was remedial work. Oh my God, we're launching this new application in 2 months. Has anyone thought about how it's going to work after we go live? And all this sort of remedial retrofitting of service management, which really just meant support and operations of stuff that was last minute design of stuff that was going out the door. And I did a series of those, and I was thinking, God, I'm not actually enjoying this. So the quality of the work I was getting seemed to be going down, and the quantity as well. So it was pretty much a no-brainer for me to jump horses and push my DevOps work, because A, there was work there suddenly at last. Recently there was some interest, and B, it's great work. Again, the ITSM people listening will hate me for this, but so many times when we engaged in ITSM, even if we had a good sort of strategic focus, the results were hard work to get in, and quite often demonstrated greater cost, not improvement in performance, just more people doing more work, and didn't necessarily, as often as I would like, demonstrate results. And whereas I'm having the contrary experience with DevOps, that that it's more likely to produce really good results, and it's fun, and people like it because there's a lot more carrot and a lot less stick. We're saying, look, we're going to empower you. We're going to get out of your way. We're going to make your work easier. We're going to lift the quality of your results. We're going to make your customers happy with what you're doing. We're going to let you tell us how you want to work instead of giving you flowcharts and 300-page binders full of procedures. It's split in terms of and so it offers light at the end of the tunnel to people. It's like, hey, instead of saying IT is going to become more cumbersome and bound, and it's saying, hey, in a couple of years' time, life's going to be a lot better. We're going to be doing things faster and easier, slicker and quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mentioned just before we went on air that in Melbourne, a lot of the ITSM folk got together for a Christmas afternoon drinks, and a lot of the discussion there, it wasn't all work talk, but a lot of discussion was about ITSM professionals keeping relevant and looking to things like lean and DevOps and agile. Otherwise, we'll just become, dinosaurs. Doesn't mean ITSM is dead, but it has to adopt and adapt, as we've always said since version 1 of ITIL, to the new frameworks and methods and approaches that are coming into our industry and what people are saying are disrupting them. I don't think they're disrupting them at all. I just think they're keeping them moving forward and doing things better. It's all around CSI, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It is. And finally, CSI is given the attention that it should have. It's book 1, not book 5. It's where we start, and it's where we drive the culture rather than the housekeeping that comes after. So, which is where it should have been in ITIL, but I'm just, but what actually happens is often different. So, it's really interesting, some of the debates online with ITSM diehards, and it's really interesting some of the conversations I have at client sites with the diehards, and it really is a mind shift, and you really do feel when someone has got it or hasn't. You really do feel when they've made that shift or haven't. It's apparent. So that sounds very mystical, but people need to understand that everything's different. So yes, ITSM is still there. And yes, those practices still exist, and even a lot of them are still performed in the same way. But a few of them are radically challenged, and a lot of them are a little different. So the agile service management stuff, the idea of applying agile techniques to how we develop our service management practices, for example, I think that's an important concept to understand, that we as practice experts need to change the way we work to much more incremental, iterative, flexible ways of improving practice, and not being monolithic, we're going to have an incident management project. And I think the other big change that I've seen is systemic thinking. So again, I always used to challenge that a process is not a unit of work. You don't do incident management and do request management and do change management. You have to say the objective is to, whatever, get faster or higher customer sat, and do a little bit of incident, a little bit of problem, a little bit in order to work towards that goal. And so systemic thinking drives that same approach. It says, I was talking to someone the other day who had been tasked with fixing their change management process. And I said, you're being asked to fix one cog in a machine. So what can you do to optimize one cog in a machine? Maybe you can reduce the friction, maybe you can change its color, make it shinier, but it's a cog, right? At the end of the day, it's got to stay exactly the same shape for the machine to work. And so unless you fix the whole machine, if someone says to you, go fix that cog, there's not a hell of a lot you can do. And that's been a revelation to me, to understand the systemic thinking. You've got to fix the whole system for, otherwise you're just doing local optimization, you're just tweaking.
Absolutely. And I know you deliver the or train for the Certified Agile Service Manager. I did mine online, and there's some discussion online about the certification. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was quite eye-opening, sort of when you're not, agile, DevOps, Scrum sort of aficionado, and you start reading, you go, this is just common sense. It's another penny drop, you know. And I wrote a blog that talked about someone, as you say, being tasked with doing the change, improving the change management process because the business said it was broken. So they get together in a room and plan a 6 or 12-month project with all the improvements that have been delivered to them. And in 12 months' time, they're not delivering what the business need because the requirements have changed. Whereas in the other room, you've got someone working on, you know, multiple processes, CSI, Kanban boards, you know, daily stand-up and 2 or 4 week sprints, and delivering constantly what the business requirements, or the rest of the business, I mean, IT is the business, but what the customers' end users' requirements are. And actually, and it's just so easily breaks down those silos as well, doesn't it? Because it's not an IT team working together. This is, you know, IT and the business, you know, your analysts and your technical tools people all working, you know, and together, which is just so powerful in breaking down those walls.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So how in terms of certified agile service manager, what's been the response in the training room when you've been delivering that?
Well, same thing. People have the revelation, yeah, wow, we can change the way we work as much as the build teams are changing the way they work and adopt their same practices in what we do. My only criticism of that course is that it does still at least imply that the process is the unit of work. And so I do tell my students to try and think about the broader system and not try and fix single cogs. That's one feedback on that course. But in general, yeah, the idea that you can take agile and so, I mean, people are doing that, right? A Lean Enterprise by Jez Humble, you know, it's about taking the concepts to how you run an enterprise, a whole organizational transformation to be more lean and agile. And these ideas, you can take them anywhere and apply them. And it's quite, you know, it's quite fascinating to watch that. In the same way that service management always, at least potentially, could be taken to non-IT contexts. But IT had become the thought leader in that space. I think the same is true of agile and lean now. Yeah.
On that note, Ron, there's a lot of people talking about, you know, enterprise service management and business service management. Where do you see that going? Is it going anywhere, or is it just talk at the moment?
Well, in the little rock on the planet here, I find that once you get above a certain level, people are much more already talking about product management. And so, potato, when you dig into it, it's the same animal, just seen through a different lens. But if they're already seeing through a product lens, then trying to get them to talk service instead of product is you know, is just redundant. It's just, you know, it's just as easy to adapt your language to say, okay, let's talk about product catalogs and let's talk about delivery of products and, you know, portfolio of products, and stop trying to get you to talk service. Then that's been my limited experience. Have you found that sort of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. You started a collaboration online around DevOps. Do you want to tell us a bit about that so that anyone watching this can go and find out more?
It has, yeah. So it's called Kamu, K-A-M-U, and it's on Google+. Good choice of platform there. Booming collaborative platform, said he sarcastically. I'm waiting for Google+ to go the way of Google Wave. Sorry, James Gander, but I do think that Google+ is certainly not booming. But anyway, it sits on Google+, and originally it was a collaboration platform. Like so many of those things, you've got to get the critical mass of people, and it doesn't have that. So it's become more of a repository of stuff that people find. So there's a whole lot of stuff there now rather than an active community. John Willis has a go at me every now and then to say you should revive that. Maybe I'll give it another kick to see if I can get it to actually be an active community. But you know, I think one of the lessons we've learned from the internet is you can't create communities; you just have to follow them. blindly
Yeah,
follow them.
yeah. I noticed on Google Plus, we started, not we, but the community started on Facebook first with Back to ITSM as a community platform or place to have discussions, and the same started on Google Plus, and the Google Plus one's just dead.
That
Everyone's
is actually one of the few exceptions to what I just said, by the way. I think they did a great job of actually creating the Back to ITSM community. And as you say, they launched it on several platforms and found out which one lived and which one died. But I think that is a good example that it is possible to create a community, but by golly, it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, you need that critical mass, or it just becomes a repository with one or two people throwing things in there for reference and future reference. So in terms of going back to DevOps, what is, so for like an organization, that's got legacy systems, traditional IT, what's tipping people over the edge to say we need to be more agile, we need DevOps? Is it just hearing what the industry's saying and said we should be doing that? It's another shiny new thing that we should be part of?
A bit, quite a bit. I think there's a big element of desperation. Just what we're doing isn't working. There has to be a better way. I think there's a certain element of just grasping at straws. And then I see a model for how, I hate to say maturity model, but a model for how people do progress in this stuff, where there's a period where they're experimenting, where people are trying this thing called Agile and this thing called DevOps and doing pockets of it. But then at some point, there is a tipping point, as you say, in each organization that triggers. And it could be a negative thing, like a catastrophic waterfall project, for example, that everyone in the organization says, this must never happen again, right? Or it could be something like a new CIO coming in, which of course is a positive thing, right? Always. A new CIO coming in and wanting to change everything, or it could be an acquisition or a merger or something like that, triggering, the executive of the organization says, now, if your IT guy is going to cope when we have a merger, and they go, oh, well, funny you should mention that. We would like to change. Or it might just be an organizational transformation, so it's Department X 2020 vision transformation, blah, 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 and IT just kind of says, well, this is our contribution to that. But anyway, something comes along that triggers, that says, okay, enough experimenting. Now make it our DevOps, make it our new way of working. What does that look like for us? Define our new way of working. And that phase, that incubation phase, where somebody is tasked and empowered to incubate a new way of working for the organization, is the second phase. And then the third phase is, once that emerges, we get some agreement on a new way of working, then we drive that out. It starts getting adopted across IT, and IT adopts a new way of working. And that finally triggers the fourth phase, where, and these aren't necessarily perfectly linear, of course, but that triggers the fourth phase where the business goes, oh my gosh, you guys are behaving differently. We need to behave differently in order to engage with you. You don't want to do projects anymore. You just want us to provide you with a stream of features to build. You don't want great gobs of money. You just want us to fund some standard teams that you can bring work to. So suddenly the whole operating model, and you want us to engage daily and weekly, not every 18 months. And so the whole operating model of the organization has to change. And it's driven by the fact that IT starts behaving differently down in the heart of the organization. That pushes out this change of behavior in the whole organization about how it thinks, how it does business change. And so that whole lean enterprise thing kicks in, the whole no projects, the idea that you can have streams of funding and you can stand up product teams that exist for the life cycle of the product. I went into one organization here in Wellington and I was overjoyed that at the executive level, there were executives saying product, not project. But that thinking was already up at the executive leadership team level. That makes it a lot easier for IT to say product, not project.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's, it's really exciting times. From those organizations that you have seen embarking on a DevOps agile sort of journey, let's call it, is there any sort of one mistake organizations are seeing or making in trying to move in that direction?
A couple. One is trying to leapfrog that first experimental phase and just go, bam, we're going DevOps, So evolution, not revolution. I think a little bit of learning initially is a good thing to understand what it means to us and what we're capable of and what we've already got, right? Creating an inventory of people and tools and teams that have actually done something and understanding what is already there in the organisation. So I think that's one. And the other one, which I counsel against, is driving transformation through a reorg.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty certain that that's a mistake, that reorgs only are counterproductive, and that the way I like to phrase it is it's a sign of your maturity in your transformation when you finally start to understand how you should reorg in order to support that transformation. You have to do a lot of learning and growing and experimenting first to go, hey, it would make more sense if we move these teams around. The only exception I make to that is standing teams to bring work to the build and infrastructure as well. So that those teams can be virtual. You don't actually have to reorg. You can create virtual standing teams that you bring the work to. So that's one way you do reorganize fairly early. But this whole idea of completely restructuring the IT department because we're DevOps and we're going to make the devs and the ops sit together and we're going to make them report to the same manager. Yeah, maybe, but develop enough maturity to understand whether that is or isn't going to work for you.
Yeah.
And do it incrementally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the phrase "suck it and see." So people say to me, "Oh, consultant, what should we do?" And I say, "Well, why don't you blah blah and blah blah?" And they say, "Is that going to work?" And I go, "Well, how the hell do I know? Do I look psychic? I mean, you're asking me to let's try something with 400 or 1,000 people, and you're asking me whether they're going to respond to that or not. Let's suck it and see.
Yeah.
Let's try something. Let's iterate. Let's experiment. Let's learn. Let's back off when we have to. Try something else." That's the only way we're going to transform. So to say, I'm going to redesign the org chart and I'm going to get it right is, I think, pretty brave.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like an organisation saying, we're going to be agile, but we're not going to approach it in an agile way. So,
exactly. Yeah. Let's have a big waterfall project.
We're going to do agile as a waterfall project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Rob, in great conversation, in wrapping up, as we look towards 2017, and I know all our consultants go, let's talk about what happened last year and what's coming next, but put your IT skeptic hat on, what are you skeptical about for the coming year?
Well, I'm a bit too fizzy and optimistic at the moment. I've got a blog post that's been sitting there for weeks and weeks waiting for me. I'm a bit pissed off at, can I name names?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm a bit pissed off at Axelos launching the official DevOps training because they have no mandate to be official anything. So I'm a bit skeptical about the commercial forces starting to weigh in on the IP.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame. I'm a bit skeptical about, I think we're going to get into that phase now where the term DevOps gets really debased and everyone's doing DevOps and we bought a DevOps and it didn't work and all that whole journey that ITIL went on. We ITILists are just going to be sitting there going, I know what's going to happen next to you, you wait. People are going to think they're doing DevOps when they're not. There's going to be a whole lot of crappy advice given. There's going to be crappy tools. Click here to download DevOps. The official DevOps, and then people will say, "Oh, DevOps, we tried that, it doesn't work." And there'll be that whole backlash, that whole hype curve, right? DevOps is now, I think, at the peak and thundering down into what's called the trough of disillusionment.
Mm.
And that's an inevitable process that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is a shame, and as you say, we've seen it with ITIL. You know, I know Kirsty McGowan worked for a client who said, you know, we bought ITIL and it didn't work. You know, it's going to be exactly what you're saying, and it is such a shame because, you know, these are, you know, good approaches, good frameworks, and then you just get people just, you know, oh, I worked for that organisation, it didn't work, and then that sort of word of mouth spreads, and people go, oh, we're not going to do that. You know, it didn't work for X, it's not going to work for us. So it is a shame to get it wrong.
And yet, I struggle to be the IT skeptic with DevOps. I am getting I'm seeing the results, right? I'm working with a government department here where there's an interview on, you know, from the DevOps Enterprise Conference about, I'm working with a ministry here where huge government ministry, 6 months, have just completely pivoted and transformed the way that they build and deliver software. And the results are just fantastic. And so when something as conservative and monolithic as big ministry can spin on a dime by their standards, I find it really hard to be skeptical.
Yeah. Well, that's good coming from the IT skeptic. So Rob, thanks so much for your time. I'm really glad we were able to make this happen. Some really good food for thought in there, and I recommend anyone to get hold of, you know, the Phoenix Project, the DevOps Handbook, look at Kamu, KAMU on Google Plus to get more information, look at Certified Agile Service Manager, and lots of more sources of information out there, but we certainly do have to keep ourselves relevant. So wishing you a very happy holiday season and a prosperous new year.
And to you too, Karen. Have a good one.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.